Hi, guys. All right. I am Gail with Gail Southern Living, and I do gardening and cooking on my channel, some crafts, and I raise chickens. And today I'm interviewing Kim Somerville with It's All About the Biology. I'm reading it right there off the screen. Uh, I want to say hi to a few people in the chat. Hello, Susan with the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch. Hello, Rory Gardner. And hi, Silly Lily, and Joe with Grow Big TV, Robin with Garden State So and So. And if you're listening on my channel or on his channel, share this out on your community tab to get some more folks in here to hear this really awesome interview. So I got some good questions for you. Cool. And hopefully some of you guys will watch this in the replay. So thank you to everyone who watched this in the replay. I appreciate all of you. Hello, Jan with Simply Jan Homestead. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. How long have you been on YouTube?
This round, approximately 5 years, maybe.
5 years.
Yeah, I started on a totally different network, and then I started my own network a year and a half ago.
That's cool. I've been on here 4 years myself.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What happens during the decomposition process? Can you explain that to us?
The decomposition process or composting process?
The composting process.
Okay.
Hi, Nikki.
There's different types of compost methodology. You have your thermophilic compost, you have a cold compost, and then you have things like worm castings and going down that rabbit hole. But in any type of compost, whether that's the compost pile under the trees in a forest, because that's Mother Nature's composting, it's breaking out of the plant material that is available, or if an animal dies and is taken back into the soil, it's all broken down by the biology that existed in, say, that leaf. When the leaf comes down, the biology switches from growing the plant to breaking the plant down. So in composting, if you take a single cantaloupe rind and you compost that down, the biology starts picking away at the cell structure. And in that cell structure, you have magnesium, carbon, molybdenum, all the different elements that make up that cell. The biology breaks it down and makes it into an available substance that's much easier to be used by the biology to build a new cell. So the same biology has many different applications, from growing the cell, maintaining the cell, to breaking it down to the level of a microscopic level, the atomic level, to be able to create new cell structures. And when your compost pile heats up, what's happening is there is such an explosion, or some people use the term flowering, of the biology. In everything that happens, energy has to be expended. So that energy creates heat, and then you get your thermophilic compost that heats up and knocks out any of the pathogens you're trying to remove by the composting pile or method. And at the same time, it's also creating the food source necessary for the next level of biology. So your composting starts out very bacterial dominant. And as it moves and gets older and it cools off, other forms of biology are allowed to exist there. Say a nematode or a protozoa can't live in the environment of such heat. It would be like us trying to exist in a stove, right? we just couldn't live there. But as the pile cools off in the composting process, the next level of biology is allowed to start infiltrating the pile or being created from the materials inside of the pile itself. The genetic code of, say, a nematode is there. And as your pile cools off and that particular creation can exist there, then the biology takes the components it's been breaking down and it puts it together to make the next level of biology, knowing that it follows the predator prey model. So you have to have a lot of bacteria to support the next level of biology, or the next level of biology doesn't have any food to consume. And then the next level of biology and the next level up until you're starting to get into your worms and then up into your birds. And the cycle is a continuous cycle, like the soil food web talks about, is that complete cycle. And it all does start with biology breaking down material and making it available to build new things. I hope that's probably way too deep, but I hope that explains
no, that's good. That's good stuff. So I actually have one little area that's almost a circle that's I call the wild garden, and in the middle of it, there's actually 4 chickens buried there. Now I don't really dig into there, but I knew it would be good for the soil, so I did it. You know, so I did learn that little piece of information.
Well, we
What
want to put
kinds of
blood meal
things?
in the soil. That's what you're doing by putting the chicken in. You're putting blood meal, feather meal, etc. And those are long-term calcium and magnesium, etc.
I didn't actually write that question down, but I think it would be an interesting question. Just kind of came up there. Can you explain bone meal as opposed to blood meal to maybe some of these new gardeners who might be in the chat?
Sure. Bone meal is made from your bones, so it's got a lot higher component of, say, calcium, etc., that make up the structure of the bone. And the forms of, we'll just use calcium because everybody knows there's calcium in bone. The calcium in the bone is in a tighter matrix. It takes longer for the biology to break it out of the matrix of the bone or the cells that make up the bone than it would be to, say, if it was in water soluble calcium mix that Korean natural farming makes, or natural farming, where you're stripping it from eggshells and floating it in a liquid. It's much easier for the biology to grab that. But in your bone meal, it's a longer term storage in the soil for the biology to mine, break down. And it's also, while they're mining that, it's giving them a place to live. So in the blood meal, the same basic calcium component that's in the blood meal is in, or started out in, a liquid state. So it's already easier for the biology to grab, break out of that structure. So it's a quicker way to get the nutrients out. The more you break something down, it's like we were talking composting. It's really hard for a plant to take a leaf as a leaf and use it to build new cells. Once the biology's broken it down, and the further down it goes to where it's the smallest components that are so much easier to transport. Because you got to remember, how does the transportation in a plant work? How does that molecule move from in the soil up through the plant to the leaf tip, where they're busy building new cell structures of the leaf? How does that move up? It's much easier to move that as a smaller component at a molecular level than a large one.
Do you actually break your eggshells down when you use
Yes.
them?
Yes.
Like
Well, I
powder,
use,
or just like little tiny pieces?
it really depends on the use. If I want a longer term calcium in my soil, I would use a larger surface area, not broken down as much, where if I want it more quickly available, I will powder it. And if I want to take it to another step, I will actually put crushed eggshell, cook it, and add it to apple cider vinegar or a vinegar with a mother. Allow the mother culture, the biology that exists there, to strip the calcium out of the eggshell itself and hold it in the water column or the vinegar. And that's the next level of, I can use that as a foliar, and it's instantly available because it's already broken down to the exact component necessary. Plus, you also have to consider the biology that broke it out of that eggshell. You're putting back on with that calcium the biology that can take that and build with it. Same biology, just a different job that they have.
Do you have a do you have a video on that, on the eggshell with the apple cider vinegar? Do you have a video kind of explaining how you do that?
I haven't personally actually I did do WCA, but it's in a bunch of different parts on one of the shows I was doing. But if you look up Chris Trump, he actually, it's in the Korean natural farming, which I just call natural farming. It's been going on for millennia around the world. But he trained with the gentleman that really brought it out to the world, Master Cho, who was recognized for actually his no smell piggery is where he got his recognition from. But it's fermentations. It's like us, making sauerkraut or making pickles. That's better for our bodies because it's already been partially broke down. And what Master Cho has found is all these ancient methods that the people in Korea were using to, help the biology, make it easier for the biology to work. It's like you, Gail, if I gave you a roll of yarn and a crochet hook, you're going to create something with that, where if I just give you the wool and say, okay, well, you have to process it first before you can do this, it's going to be harder for you. It's going to take more energy. So the greater amount of energy that the human can do for the plant, breaking it down, the structures that are necessary in our soils, our minerals, etc., the more we do the work prior, the less energy the plant has to use in processing and building itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I have a friend, Heather with Milk and Honey Heritage Farms, and she taught me something this year about how she boils her bones and makes bone broth. From there, she turns it into bone meal. After she's boiled it to make her broth, she turns it, and of course the original meal. So the original meal, then the bone broth, then she takes it down and makes it into bone meal. So I'm going to give that a shot, like this fall and winter time. That's one of my projects that I have going on. So I thought that was really interesting. But I wrote down what you said about the vinegar and eggshells. So I'm going to look into that one. That's a good one. So many things are coming up that I didn't even write down.
Well, you raised chickens, young lady. Did you run into a few years ago when you couldn't get oyster shell? I don't know if they had that.
I do use my crushed eggshells for my chickens and also for my gardening. So I've been doing that for quite a few years now. Hello, Jennifer Ocean Homestead.
One of the wonderful things you can do is the making the water soluble calcium. You can add that into the water, and it's broken down to that next level instead of just the eggshell. And you'll find your eggs will be much thicker shelled because you've done the work. The chicken doesn't have to, have its biology break it down. It's right there in the water already. So it's just like giving them an extra boost in nutrition.
I don't even buy eggshells for my chickens. I've been using I don't even buy the oyster shell. I've been
Yeah.
doing eggshells the whole time, and I've never had
Yep.
a single problem. But I do bake it for about 7 minutes in the oven, and then I crush it. I actually put it in a bowl, and I get my ice cream scooper backwards and just beat it
Yep.
like that. It was actually my husband that came up with that little thing.
He was saying, "Sweetheart, can you use this for your aggravation instead of using my head with that frying pan, please?"
Yeah, it's good for that. It's good for that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's great. So what kind of things do you put into your compost?
Oh, I think it's more what would I not put into a compost pile, and depending on the length of time you're going to keep your compost going, you can basically add anything. If pussy kitten, oh, I love kitties. That's too cute. But you can put anything in. There's been studies on human manure and how it breaks down over a length of time, and it's one of the best fertilizers on our planet. Unfortunately, with all the chemicals that we consume now, the pharmaceuticals, I wouldn't want to use it.
Yeah.
But anything that's organic, you can break down. Now, the problem or main problems is going to be, am I going to be attracting rats? Am I going to be attracting all these things that, I don't want my compost pile to stink, so I don't put fish in it, but if you put it in deep enough where it's not, the odor isn't coming off your pile, you don't have to worry so much about the animals. But it's a length of time that you want to compost. You want to make sure that anything that is bad, salmonella, etc., has been knocked down. But you can compost basically anything. Raw meat can be composted. Look at nature and a deer dying in the forest.
Yeah.
The biology makes it blow up first before it breaks it all down.
Yeah,
And brings
I
it
heard
back
that
into the soil.
clothes, if cotton clothes will actually break all the way down. I did not know that. I learned that one this year.
It's a
Hello,
natural substance.
I had no idea. But if it's got all that other stuff in it, it won't break down all the way. So
It will. It just takes a long time.
Yeah, I bet it does.
It's like our forever chemicals that we're spraying on crops and on land, etc., that they're worried about never breaking down. The biology you have to consider has already played with those substances, those molecules that make up that, compound that we call forever chemical. It can actually over time break all those molecules out, and as soon as it breaks those bonds, glyphosate isn't there anymore, this isn't there anymore, because the chemical combination doesn't exist anymore.
That's cool. That's good information. That really is. Okay, let's see. Let me get to one of these. Let's see. What is the difference between biofertilizers and chemical fertilizers?
Well, your chemical fertilizers are just that. They're a chemical compound put together by us, and they're giving very specific compounds into it. So I would compare it to, I have, a shelf that only has, pasta on it. And then over here, I have a shelf that has pasta, and it's got, potatoes and vegetables and meats and, a much broader range. That's your natural organic. It has a more diverse amount of available, compounds in it, whether it's calcium, magnesium, molybdenum, etc. An organic fertilizer, properly like your compost, has that biodiversity, where an inorganic or chemical fertilizer, they're giving you only a very small window that your plant can use in the compounds that are being supplied. So it's always the more diverse of available compounds, the better off any type of fertilizer is. That's where when you're using plants, breaking the plants down, you have a much wider variety than in anything you can find from a chemical fertilizer manufacturer.
Yeah, I was listening to one of your interviews today, and I believe it might have been a lady. She talked about getting different kinds of manures, or maybe it was a
Mm-hmm.
man, I'm not sure. But the person was saying, I was just kind of listening while I was running around the house. I was listening to think of some things to ask you. And they were talking about getting chicken manure and
Yep.
this kind and that kind, rabbit and this, and they were getting
Yep.
it to be diverse. I never even thought about, I basically, right, I just have chicken manure
Mm-hmm.
and I use that, but I never ever, well, now I do buy cow manure from the store. I usually buy
Mm-hmm.
about one bag a year because I'm a
Yep.
backyard gardener. That's
Yep.
enough for me. So, but that's about all the diversity I have in the manure.
Well, and the manure is meant to be composted before you're putting it onto your soil. It's always better if you've allowed the biology to actually, consume and break it down a little bit more. That's where when I was, growing a certain plant, I was taking, cooked soil. So soil ran through a huge oven to take everything alive out of it. I was putting that into a composter. Then I was adding different substances like green sand, different rock dusts, etc., 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 and making what a lot of people would call a super soil. But then what I was doing is I was leaving that in the compost tumbler, keeping it moist, and letting it compost and tumbling it every day for at least 30 days, allowing the biology to actually break all those compounds down. So your blood meal, to break it down to make it more bioavailable to the biology that builds the cell of the plant. And you also have to consider they're using those same compounds to build more biology. It's like when you get sick, Gail, and you have a cold, your body reacts to that virus or bug in, we'll just call it bug in your body, and it sends out white blood cells. And that's your army, that's your Navy, your Air Force going in to fight that cold. The more you take a broth, whether chicken, beef, etc., with those broken down components, good components, the faster your body is able to make more white blood cells, and you overwhelm the cold. So if you're have a cold for a day, it's because your body has available substances in it that the biology can easily create the white blood cells for your body to go fight. If you don't, the cold is going to stick around longer and longer and longer. But by putting it into the liquid form, so we do foliar sprays with plants, we drink, a broth when we're sick, it's easier for the biology to grab those components, use them for what's necessary, either in your soil systems or in our own bodies.
That's why chicken soup has worked for so many years. It's basically,
Mm-hmm.
if you're doing it from the actual chicken with bones in it, you're getting that bone broth, which is good for you. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why that works. So they have a question here. I went ahead and pulled up for you to
Yep.
answer.
Is there a rule of thumb for how far from your house a compost should be? I've seen people use a bokashi and have the bin right in their kitchen. And that's something, because of the process of bokashi, you can have in a enclosed pail, and you're sealing it so you don't get the smell. An outdoor compost or a larger compost pile, that's strictly up to you. I've seen people that have had it right on the side of their house. They've built their 3-part compost system because they're taking from one to the next and for flipping right beside their house because they live in town. That's the only space they have in a small yard is on the side with the neighbor, never having a problem. If you're doing on a farm scale and you're taking, your chickens when you're cleaning up the chicken house, your cows, your goats, your pigs, your straw, well, you're going to want to have that a greater distance away because you're going to have a huge mound. So it's really environment. What can you do in your environment? Are you living in an apartment? Are you better off to have a small worm farm that you're feeding your excess greens to and having the worms break it down in your house under your sink or wherever? Or
I've
are
heard of
you
somebody having
well,
that under their bed.
why not? It doesn't smell.
If you like worms, sure.
Well, see, there's if you don't want to have the worms run away and be everywhere, you got to maintain temperature and moisture levels. If the worms are escaping, you got a problem with the food source, moisture level,
Yeah.
and there's enough knowledge out there, people showing worm farming, and I've done worm farming myself,
Yeah.
where you can learn exactly what you should and should not do. But I'll say something I tell everybody: listen to many voices. So watch a ton of videos, gather as much information as you can, and then find what works for you. Who do you listen to that you trust? Whose voice? So just keep listening and learning, guys.
Yeah. Agree. Let's see what the next question is. Okay. What is the rhizosphere and why is it crucial for plant growth?
The rhizosphere. This was actually one of the first interviews I did online, was talking exactly about the rhizosphere. I think we lost Gail there for a second, but I'll just carry on. The rhizosphere or rhizosheath is the area around your roots and your root hairs. And that is where the biology comes up
Oh.
to feed the biology into the plant. So at the root hair, the rhizosphere can be manipulated by the biology that lives on each different hair. So on a single root, you can have a hair on the left side and a hair on the right side with a different pH level, because this root hair is mining or wants to get the components that can exist at, say, a 9 on pH, where this one is wanting stuff that's at a 5 pH, and the biology necessary for the 5 pH totally different. Biology in the 9 pH can't exist over here. So each root hair can have its own terroir or environment around it to attract the different types of components necessary to build the plant. So that rhizosphere is the buffer zone that is created from the root hair to hold the soil structure away, so that there can be the delivery system of components into the plant and the cells of the plant. So consider a truck driver running up to a warehouse, and this warehouse takes these components, and this warehouse over here takes a bunch of different components. That's how the function is. That's all the trucking area, and you residential car guys, you stay way over there because we don't want you interfering with us. It's kind of a weird explanation, but I hope it explains
No,
it.
that's good. I'm sorry. I think I might have accidentally hit a button there. So I did a KK from the Vineyard Chicks. I hit a button and went, oh, what happened? So Alfonso wants to know if compost can actually catch on fire. Can it catch on fire? It can.
Oh yeah.
There you go. There's your answer, Alfonso.
If you watch The Soil Matters with Leighton Morrison, and go back into some of the shows that he's talked about, the work he's done in California with some of the largest composters in California. They have areas where if they do not continuously turn that compost, they can have a fire there, and it'll be a natural disaster, the likes of which we have not seen for a long, long time. It would create destruction on a scale most people in California would go, oh my God, it's worse than the San Andreas fault.
Wow.
Ground up organic material that they can't cool off to stop it going thermophilic, not just hypophilic, but that next level where it'll just burst into flames.
So when you water your compost, what is the purpose of the watering? Can you explain that? That wasn't written down. I just thought of that as we were going along.
It's the same basic principle in your soil. You want to try to maintain a level of moisture at around 70%. So if you grab your compost and you squeeze it and you have a few droplets dribbling out of your hand, or you can do the same thing in your soil, that's around 70% without using a hydrometer where you're testing it through the science. That's a good rule of thumb. Why you want that is the same reason that you want to drink water yourself, Gail. We're 90+% water in every cell of our bodies, the plants' bodies, the animals' bodies. Water is necessary. So the biology needs water molecules inside its cell structure. So if you don't have that water, then all of a sudden things go hydrophilic, or if you have a plant and you haven't watered it and you pour water on it and that water just runs right through, that's hydrophilic. You don't want your compost to go that, because it can't absorb the water. And what's happening is the biology literally goes to sleep. It goes into a stasis, a cyst, where it grabs a little bit of water, grabs a little bit of food, and it creates a coating around itself that water just runs off of. Okay. And it takes time of putting the water into the soil again for that biology to reactivate and go back to work. So if you aren't keeping your moisture content in that pile at a level to give the biology what it needs to recreate itself and to have that energy to go out and break down that compost, then you're not going to be doing any benefit. It's going to take longer for that compost to break down without that moisture content. We can't survive, the human species, very long without water. We can go a long time without food.
So the microbes can't live because you're not watering it. So basically,
they don't have water
your
to drink.
Compost is dying because you're not watering it. You're not giving it water. Okay.
It may not necessarily be dying, Gail, but it's going to sleep. Right? It's like your plant in the spring, that perennial, say a rose, it dries right out, but in the spring it slowly starts to come back to life as the moisture gets in, and you can see it rising on a rose stalk where it's brown and crispy, and then the bottom it's just a little bit darker, nicer color, and it just moves up. And that's the process. It needs the water. Biology needs it as much as we need water as well.
Can one of my moderators put up the link for Ken's channel for me? And it's right above his head there, the name of his channel.
It's all about the biology.
Can y'all put up his link in the chat so you guys can make friends with him, so you can get some more of this awesome gardening knowledge? Can you explain the roles of bacteria, fungi, and protozoa in the soil ecosystem?
Sure. We go back to what Dr. Elaine Ingham coined a long time ago, the soil food web. And it's that food web that you looked at the bacteria to fungi ratio. Old growth redwood forest, you're looking at a ratio of about 2,500% fungal, where in a swamp you're going to be really bacterial. It's the progression of our planet started with the bacterial and has moved into the fungal, and different plants need different levels of the balance between the bacterial and fungal to be healthy. The original plants that our planet started with, the biology or the bacteria at that time did not interact with the plants, where we now understand we have plants that actually will mesh right into the network. The plants back then, your Venus flytrap, had to actually trap the flies. Why? Because it had to get those proteins, it had to get those components from somewhere. It wasn't getting it with the meshing of the biology in the soil, because the bacteria was going, I ain't giving you nothing. I want to eat you. And so the plant learned. But as the progression of species has happened on our planet, that working with symbiotic relationships with bacterial and fungal has been more developed with our plants. Every time that a new species has been developed, whether that's a new bug that's come out, a new type of biology that's come out, a new plant species that come out, it's all interconnected through the network that Mother Nature has put together, or however whoever you think has put it all together. But it is in that balance of the fungi to bacteria that a lot of people get hung up on. If you can maintain a basic core balance of bacteria to fungi ratios in your soil, you're going to be able to grow amazing crops that we would grow. So your vegetables, your fruit trees, etc. If you can maintain that basic balance, you're going to have tremendous success. When you're moving into those fruit trees, like an apple tree, you're going to want to start leaning more to the fungal side, because that's what the tree is made from, is a more fungally dominant structure from in the soil. And it's going to be able to build those cells that much quicker, because it's already building those type of cells, breaking those type of cells down to move the progression of the species forward. So balance is really the key essence in gardening, is having such a wide biodiverse biology, where you can have all of the fungally dominant and all of the bacterial dominant available for use in your soil and for whatever you're growing. If it wants more fungi, then it's going to be able to draw from that network. If it needs more of a food source from the bacteria, it's going to draw from that food source to grow your plant.
So we talked about this a little before we started today. Why do you think the bugs are so bad this year? Can you kind of explain, what the question I asked you right before the interview today? Because I think there's a lot of people having trouble with bugs, and I'm one of them in the garden. So can you explain that some for us?
Sure. I know I had mentioned terroir. Now, most people may not have heard the term, but basically what it means is the environment that you're growing in. So we'll take where the word really came from, and that's it's a French word, and it's really got its start in the grape industry, where if a specific wine, you had to have a specific set of circumstances. So you had to be on the north face of the mountain. Your soil had to be this type of structure. Your water source was this, etc., etc. And that would create the environment where this plant does the same across the board, whether it's in, this field over here, or it's 20 miles away on the side of this mountain. As long as the base parameters were met, it was the same across the board. So that's your terroir, that's your environment that you're growing in. So West Texas is different than Panama, is different than Northern Canada or Europe or anywhere else. So if you dive down into where you're growing, your backyard or your farm, that's going to be your terroir. If you have a creek running through, it's a microclimate. That's that specific terroir. So bugs come in and are available in all terroirs. And the reason some bugs come when it rains is the availability of a food source. So if it's too much rain or it's not enough rain, it causes different reactions both in our soil and in our plants. So if it's not raining, or if you don't have a healthy soil and your plant isn't healthy, then the bugs who are designed to come and break down those components, just like the biology, they're a larger biology because it's exactly the same. It's all made out of cells, which the cells are made by the biology. It comes, breaks down that plant because we shouldn't be eating it. It's not a healthy plant. A healthy plant sees very, very little bug pressure. We'll take an aphid, for example. An aphid feeds by piercing the leaf structure and sucking out the moisture from inside of the leaf. So if you have a healthy enough plant, it creates a thick layer of cells, and the thicker the layer, the harder it is for an aphid to feed on the plant, where it'll get to a point where the cell structure is so thick, the aphid lands on the plant, tries to eat, and it goes, I can't feed on this plant. I'm going to look for one that I can. And all of a sudden, your bug pressure disappears. It all really boils down to biology in your plant, biology in your soil, and from there, the available nutrients that you're giving to that biology to build more biology, more and more healthy cells.
So, are you basically saying that your bug pressure is kind of like your plant is not quite getting everything it needs, so the bugs
Yes.
are attacking for that reason? So we need to
Yeah.
work on amending our soil better and things like that. Can you tell me what you put in your compost tea?
Well, your compost tea is whatever you put in your compost, and then you're just taking that and processing it into a liquid form. And we've talked how it's much better to use the liquid form of that broken down material because it's easier for the biology to put it into the structure of your plant or the soil. Now, are you asking, am I adding molasses or sugars or that? Or are you
Are you adding like leaves? Are you adding pulling up weeds and throwing that in there? Are you putting
everything?
some banana peels? I mean,
Yep.
what kind of type of things would you put in there?
Well,
To build a good compost tea.
well, it's everything that you put in your compost when you're stripping it out of that compost. So yes, your vegetables, your bananas, your anything that is organic, you can put in your compost. And once it's finished, once it's a healthy compost, you're taking that. I know I use a lady's pantyhose, okay, and an air bubbler, and I agitate to be able to strip the biology off of the compost itself into the water column. Now, if I want to propagate a specific type of biology, if I want a bacterial or if I want a fungal or a mix, you can add different things to promote the growth by giving the biology you're after a food source. So if we're making a cheese or a yogurt or anything like that, It's very specific lactic acid bacteria that you need to make those components. So you can look at that as your compost. You want to add, say, a more fungally dominant foliar spray with more, say, calcium. You can add more calcium plants into your compost. So let me tackle it from a different direction. What you class, or what most people class as weeds, a person that studies apothecary and plant medicine, those are plants that our bodies can use the components for health. So if you look at the different things, plantain that you can find almost anywhere, that's good for your body. So if you're looking at a plant and it's good for our bodies, I call them medicinal plants for the soil. Just like they're medicinal plants for us, if you find a weed in your environment, there's a reason that Mother Nature has popped that seed or allowed that seed to pop. If you look in a manual on herbalism and you find out what components that plant is taking up from the soil structure, say it's high in molybdenum and calcium and different components, those are components your soil may be missing and are very likely missing because Mother Nature generally doesn't pop a seed that she doesn't have an ulterior motive for. As in, when it breaks down, it's going to put that substance it is drawn up from the sand, silt, clay, and organic material into itself back into the soil as it's being broken down. And it's easier for the biology to mine the components out of a plant that you're composting than a grain of sand that is going to be a longer term. So it's the more you can look at your terroir, the environment you have, the weeds that you have, you can gain more of a knowledge on what your soils are actually missing by observing the plants that Mother Nature is putting back there consistently. Whether it's a dandelion is going to give you calcium, it's going to break up hard soil. There's a reason that medicinal plant for your soil is there.
That's a really good answer. A couple of years ago, I started hearing about compost tea. So I started researching on YouTube, and believe it or not, there's kind of a lack of information about what people put in their compost tea. Like I found one lady that talked about it a little bit, but everybody else is like, it's like a big mystery. It's like, what are you putting in there? And after watching that, I did do that at one point, but then I kind of stopped that habit. But I was using weeds, which are beneficial, in my compost tea. And I was doing good in the garden that year. So maybe there was something to that. Well, Bushcraft's family says he uses fermented plant juice out of comfrey. So
yep,
it's cool.
And that's fermented plant juice is another Korean natural farming and there's different ways you can do it. You are using in that process, you're using sugars, generally a brown sugar, and you're using what's called osmotic pressure, and the brown sugar wants the water, okay, that's in that plant. It wants to grab that water, and when it does, it's pulling it through the cell structure of the plant, and it's bringing the nutrients that were in that plant in its water into the moisture that is left, and it's stopping the biology from going to the next step. So you're purposefully putting the biology to sleep in a lot of the Korean natural farming techniques to hold them in stasis, so you can take a little bit of a substance, add it to a larger volume, whether that's water or soil, and propagate the next level of biology to be able to take it to the next level and the next level until there's basically 5 levels of how you can grow your soil and the biology in your soil in the Korean methodology methods, I guess would be the best way to say.
Yeah.
Follow Chris Trump. Yep.
Follow Chris Trump. Yep.
Yep.
Hello,
And there's
Ed.
a guy out of Hawaii that's really good too.
Hawaii.
Yeah.
That would
I
be.
can't remember his channel, but yeah, he's studied with Master Cho in Korea as well many times. He takes you on tours with Master Cho, talking about all this stuff and being translated into English, but you can learn right from the master because he's been there with the recorder and recording the conversations, etc.
I wrote down questions, and I've even asked questions that aren't on here. So now I have to figure out what questions I do want to ask here. So let's see. How can gardeners enhance their soil microbial diversity?
Let's see where to begin. Pee.
Right.
Just pee on your property.
Boom, right? It's like boom, right?
Well, it's where isn't there microbiology on our planet? It's in our air, it's in our water, it's in our soils, it's in the ice, in the deepest layers of ice in Antarctica and the Arctic. It's microbiology is everywhere. How to enhance it and create more of it is like, how do you build a city? Well, you have a construction crew come in, you supply them with the materials, and they build houses, they build roads, they build all the infrastructure. And as long as we're supplying the biology with the building materials and the workforce, then it's going to increase naturally. It's when I got into this and like for my give you guys a little bit of an idea how I got to where it's all about the biology. I'm like a 5-year-old that goes, why does it work that way? And because of illness and injury, I've had a lot of time on my hands to study and research, etc. And in all of that, I have found so many avenues to bring correlation to how we live. But in that search, I wanted to know what's the ultimate in plants and how they grow, where's the first step. So a lot of people go, well, it's the RNA, it's the DNA of the plant. But before a cell can actually, be encoded with the DNA, you have to have the superstructure. You have to have the cell itself. It took me framing the same basic question in multitude of different ways to find where that all started. And it's called the S phase of cell development. At that level, before RNA, before the DNA, the superstructure has to be built, the house of the cell. So you have to have all your water, you have to have all the calcium, carbon, etc., brought there to be able to build a new cell, because that's cell division. That's how your plant grows. That's how we grow. That's how everything grows on our planet. But you also need the workforce. And we talked about the workforce, if you have a cold, is the white blood cells, right? Which is that particular biology creates that cell and goes out and does battle. But at the S phase, it's the construction crew. And then as it moves up, it's the maintenance crew, is the biology that exists when the cell is created. And that's what's going to be starting to gather the next round of materials and build more biology to make another cell. But at that S phase, it boils down to the construction crew, which is the biology. And if we look at just, we'll use us for an example, what we consume and put in our stomachs, and the microbiome that is there, breaking that down is breaking out the components for our cells to be growing. And it's the biology that does that work to feed it to the biology to build it. In our soils, it works exactly the same. The biology that exists in the soil, breaking down that organic material, whether it's from another plant or it's from an animal or from its the base component of sand, okay, mining it, it's the biology that does all that work. So it's the biology that is gathering, mining, and transporting and building. And that's where I came up with it's all about the biology, because without that biology, nothing gets built. No plant gets built. We don't get built.
Yeah, that's good. That's good information. Can you tell us what you want us to know about your channel? Like what is your purpose? What is your mission statement? What do you want your channel, what do you want to tell us about your channel, basically?
Well, I'll look at the two quotes that I have on the side of me. This one here, however you grow, whatever you grow, just grow. And the other one is, one lit candle can light many without ever diminishing its own light. So my channel is talking about everything that exists and how it works together. And that's from the energetic to the biology, to the light wave forms and how energy is transferred. We cover everything in a multitude of different podcasts. That we have the Soil Matters with an expert and the creator of the Horizontal Soil System, Leighton Morrison. He has a very deep understanding of building soils. He does multi-billion-dollar reclamation projects. He has a knowledge base that blows mine out of the water. Then we have Andy Lopez, another show. It's called Gardens, the Untold Story, which I'm the co-host of. With the Soil Matters, I'm actually the more the producer. I just come on every once in a while. But Andy and I, Gardens, the Untold Story. And
I think I know who you're talking about. I think I saw him on one of the interviews.
An old guy, really crazy, and
he was on the panel on Go Big TV, right?
Yes,
he was part of the panel. Like above you, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. He was part of that panel, and he's been an arborist and a gardener since his school days. So we're looking 60 plus years, all organic. He takes care of properties in Malibu. He has multiple books, etc. We do a show on Wednesdays. And then I'm going to be I'm going to be having Gail, guys. I'm going to have Gail. I'm going to be the interviewer, and Gail's going to be the guest. Of actually, we've got Simply Jane and Hillbilly Chicken. We're going to have others as well, where I'm going to play host, and I'm going to draw out of them, what they've learned, because we've all learned different things. That's why I tell people, listen to many voices. So my channel is an overview in everything that is, functioning in our planet, whether it's an understanding from a water perspective, a soil perspective, a plant perspective, building soil structures, the different methods of getting biology back into different soil structures. We try to cover it all. We try to cover and bring an understanding of how light and the wavelengths of light affect our plants, affect our bodies. We look at scientific studies, MIT's new study on how the at 45 degree in the sky of the sun, it breaks out water, not just one molecule at a time off the surface, but in big batches. We're constantly trying to bring new understandings and deeper understandings to more people so that you can share those understandings. You can become a lit candle and talk to your neighbor and your friends and your family.
Yeah. Like my sister has come to me asking me questions because I've been learning about gardening on YouTube for a few years. And
Yep.
every year, whatever problem I have in the garden for that gardening season,
Mm-hmm.
as I go into fall and winter, I do my research.
Yeah.
And I try to fix that problem so that hopefully I don't have that problem again next year.
Yeah.
So that is what I do to continue to garden. I try to learn in the fall and winter, okay, what can I do to fix this particular problem? Which right now it seems to be bugs.
Yep. And that's a lot of people. It's bugs, and it's lack of rain, too much rain. Mother Nature, I love her to bits, but she can be a real bee. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the
There's-
studies I saw with flooding and rain and the survivability of plants, and I'll just go off on a little tangent, is university study. They were along the river, and they were looking at planting different species in their strips. Okay. And they had a flood, and it completely covered the area that they were growing in for days and days and days. They found that after the water receded, in any area that they had more than, I believe it was 3 different types of plant species, the plants that were there survived. Any place that they didn't, the plants had drowned. Correlation of data is the more biology that was in those soil from all the different plants, because each plant, when the seed pops, the biology that exists inside that seed is sprayed into the soil structure, and it intermingles, it works with, and it gives more availability and diversity each different seed you plant. And they found that if they had at least 3 different ones, it didn't matter. There was enough oxygen to maintain the balance of the plant where it could come back. But it was only after they had at least 3 different types of plants that were in that strip of soil.
That's cool.
Biodiversity.
Biodiversity. Yeah. And I didn't write this one down either, but I'm just kind of thinking of it from listening to you. What is your take on rotation of your plants in your garden?
Okay. I know that in Canada, for us to have an organic certification, that they insist on crop rotation. So I would stay as much in the basic area. So if you're growing, say, lettuces or brassicas on here on this in this particular bed, you might not want to put the exact same brassica, but you want to put another brassica if you can into that bed. Reason why is brassicas want a certain type of soil structure. They want it a little bit more, say, let's give it acidic or a little bit more alkaline. Blueberries want really alkaline or really acidic. And if you stick with the general rule of species of plant, that how do I put it? There's different plants that came into existence around the same time on our planet. So you started with your grasses, and then you moved up to more of a bushy, and then vines. So if you keep all the vines, going in the same basic area, the biology that exists in the soil is the biology that works best with vining plants. You want to try to stay as tight as you can with the same types of species. So when the seed sprouts and it sprays out its biology, it comes out and goes, hey, cousins everywhere. Or it's going, oh my God, I'm going to have to fight for my life to have my biology take over this area so I can be a healthy plant. Does that make sense?
That's a good take on it, because a lot of people are like, spread this out and spread that out. And I'm like, well, hubby's already put the T-post in there for the tomatoes. I can't keep asking him to put those T-posts in and pull them out, you know? So I'm like, oh, I can't just keep moving my tomatoes around. So I was just curious about that, because, you know, that's one of the things. So after you have one of these bug infestation type things, what kind of things do you treat your bed with after this happens to hopefully miss it next year? Or is it more about just work on your amending it properly so that hopefully your plants are healthy enough to fight it off?
Well, I would be putting those unhealthy plants in your compost, breaking out the components, but just focus really on biodiversity in both the amount of minerals, etc., you have in your soils and the biology. It really is key to the biology. You can have the perfect soil and with everything plus the kitchen sink in there, for components. But if you don't have the workforce to use those components, you're not going to have anything healthy there. It's like I can bring all the materials to build a brand new house to a work site, but if I don't have the people that can actually take those and put it up to build the house, it doesn't do anybody any good.
Thank you, Jan. Yeah, because my zucchini bed specifically got hit with the vine borers this year. Now, I've been gardening at this house for 9 years, and this is my first year to ever have vine borers or squash bugs. So they attacked my whole strip of zucchini, and then I had another smaller bed of butternut squash that got attacked by the squash bugs. Never in my career of this yard have I had either of those bugs.
And you've grown them before with never had a problem.
Before with not a problem.
So what you also have to consider, Gail, is as your system progresses, it wants to find that biodiversity. It wants to find those balances. And we go back to the predator and the prey, the beetle that you're talking about, or the vine borer, etc. Those are just a next level of predator prey. So you can bring in more birds to eat those, or the next prey species will literally come along that will consume them and keep them in check. But at the very base, that whole biodiversity could be part of your soil in your yard totally healing itself and being in balance with the environment around you. If you want to avoid them eating your plants, and we talked about it before the show, you have companion planting, things that are going to bring in those birds, bees, wasps, etc., other animals, larger animals that will consume them. But those larger animals can't show up if the food source doesn't exist in your yard. It's not going to be able to be there to take care of the problem. And it's that progression, just like in your compost, it starts bacterially and it moves through the cycle, and a protozoa that can't exist at this level because there isn't enough bacteria for it to eat Once your bacteria is up, then the protozoa can be built by the biology that exists there. It doesn't just pop into existence. It's literally built out of the genetic codes that are available to the biology in your compost pile, and it's creating the prey species that is necessary to keep that bacteria in check. But the prey species can't exist there until there's enough of the prey to feed upon to have its existence be sustainable.
What kind of birds do we need to attract?
All of them.
All of
Birds, bats, owls. I had Dennis Meehan, who's been on our network several times, not this past episode, but the one before he was on. He talked about one of his animals, a hawk, coming and taking that animal away. I'm not sure if it was a duck or I think it was a duck. The hawk came, and he was really upset about it. And it was after the show, I mentioned to him, but Dennis, just think of the health that duck had because of what you've done to your property, that hawk would come and eat that. And that hawk then is part of the abundance that you have created. It has consumed that abundance and added it to a much greater and broader influence of area where it's going to go and defecate, and its chicks are going to have those extra nutrients. So don't look at it as I lost something. Look at it as I have given more into the system on the planet, because we have a battle.
The bigger picture, not just your little picture, but the whole picture of the whole world, universe, all of that, not just what's happening in my backyard, but what's happening in all of it. So here she's talking about predators on her blueberries and figs. So she's worried that I'm attracting these birds that are going to eat my things. So what do you say to that?
I say that your blueberries and figs aren't healthy, and that's why the predators are coming and eating them. They don't. Mother Nature designed it so that if we can consume that plant and it's not healthy, it's not at its peak, then she wants to break that plant down, put those components back in the soil for the next generation to get it to that health. So we constantly take from our soil environment. We constantly take from the garden. Wherein, if you're following natural principles and you're going out and you're wildcrafting, you never take more than 20%. We constantly take 100%, constantly rip everything out of the soil. If a leaf falls in Malibu, there's a gardener there picking it up and throwing it in the garbage instead of the compost pile, taking the necessary organic material away that will give biology the food that it needs to create itself and the food it needs to create healthy plants. So if you're having a problem with your figs and your blueberries or any type of plant, put more biology, make a healthier soil, you'll make a healthier plant that the bugs are not going to want to consume. There's different scientific research showing that an unhealthy plant will actually put off, radio frequencies, and, they'll put off odors that actually attract
bugs,
the predators, because that's the predator's job. They're designed by Mother Nature to go in there and eat that because it's not at its peak. It's not healthy. Anything that's not healthy in Mother Nature, she wants to break down.
That makes perfect sense. So Jan is asking, will the netting keep squash bugs out of your plants?
I would say that yes, it does have the potential. If they can't get in to attack your plant, then they're not going to attack your plant. But if they're trying to, then your plant isn't as healthy as it needs to be,
As you
which means
got
your
it.
soil and biology aren't as healthy.
So, okay. So in the situation, I'm going to use myself as the example. So my row of zucchini. So those plants produced a good maybe 17 or 20 zucchini before they died. So were the plants healthy enough then to make that, but at that point were not healthy enough to keep going? So did they use everything up, and then they're like, hey, I need more, but I'm not giving it more, so it's like, hey, okay, I'm done, basically?
It all really depends on the plant. And if you have a day neutral strawberry plant, it produces until the light in the sky reaches a certain amount of so many hours a day, and then it shuts down. Whether you have an ever-bearing strawberry, as long as it doesn't get frost, it just keeps producing. So if you want your zucchini to keep putting out for the entire season until that frost that kills off the plant, you need to give it as much of what it takes to make a zucchini, because you remember it's making that fruit, but inside that fruit is its seed. What's the purpose of all life on our planet? To reproduce, whether it's a single cell reproducing itself or it's a human being that's a trillions of cells in our bodies. We're designed to reproduce. Our plants are designed to reproduce, so it's going to use everything it can and put it into its seed and its fruit that it wants an animal or somebody or something to come grab it, eat it, put those seeds somewhere else, because it wants to repopulate itself. It wants to have the next generation and the next generation. So it's going to put as much into each one, and when it runs out of a component, then it's going to go, okay, well, I can't build this seed. There's no use my building the fruit that would house the seed. So I'm just going to shut down because I've got no more to give. Apple trees, for instance, we have an apple tree where, it would be skipping a year, and it would skip a year, and it would skip a year. But when you start adding the biology back into the soil that gives it the necessary components, all of a sudden it's producing fruit every year again, where it should be.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That's a great answer. That gives me information, and because I've had so many predators in the garden, some things are still doing really well. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to work on amending the soil so that I won't have this problem basically next year.
Do you do worm farming at all?
I don't do it.
You're doing composting though, right?
I am doing composting. I started trying to grow my own soil on the other side of the yard over there. We have half our yard's chickens and half is gardening. So on the chicken side of the yard, there's a corner over there where I've been adding leaves and sticks, and hubby runs over it with the lawnmower to break down the leaves. And then we add chicken manure in there. And when they were doing some work on the front of our house, there was a bunch of dirt. So I told them, hey, that's my dirt, put it in my backyard. So they did. So I have all that to contribute toward next year's garden. So I said I was going to try to, this year I used about 50% of my own dirt and about 50% of store-bought dirt. And the goal is to eventually be 100% non-store-bought dirt. So I am trying to head in toward that direction. And like I say, I've been just learning a lot about what to amend my soil with, what to put in my compost tea. And every year there's some improvements done. And I hope next year to have healthy enough plants that I don't attract 50 million bugs. But yeah, this is my first year to be riddled with the bugs. So
And if you
I'm getting a
solve
little
the
better at taking. I'm like, okay, we're going to solve this problem for next year, and so
Yep.
I've got a plan for the the companion planting and all the
Yep.
stuff. So, and basil
and
does work, guys. Basil
it's
helps.
all going to work together. And one of the reasons I asked about the worm farm is a way to take your compost to a whole new level. And I'll refer back to let's say sauerkraut, where it's a fermentation. Consider that you take your compost, a properly done compost, and instead of using cardboard and paper for the bedding for your worms, you actually use the compost. They'll take the compost because remember, worms eat the biology, they eat the bacteria, they put it in the front end and it comes out in the back end. They don't have acids like we do, they just have enzymes that come out, mine a little bit to feed the worm, and the rest is
I have
passed through.
considered that actually, because I have this
Yeah.
one compost area back there that I've had for a few years, and
Mhm.
I've actually considered putting worms in there.
Yeah.
I have considered that. That has been on my.
It'll
Uh,
take it to the next level. And then if you take that and you make an extract from it, just like you would a compost tea, okay, but it's at another higher level than a compost tea because it's been processed another time, made more available to biology to build the new cells. Then you can take a very small amount to do your entire backyard, would be a couple of handfuls in processed through water, bubbled, etc., would do your entire yard. Okay, and all of your plants in both a foliar feeding and a soil drench. And then you take what's left, the pulp, I guess would be a good way to put it. And you just add that wherever in your grow,
mhm.
but just constantly add more organic material. But for the biology side of it, you can quickly add biology into a soil system by doing foliars and soaking, by taking these extracts, not making a huge volume of tea, but making a small volume of concentrate, then adding it to the larger volume of water, and it goes so much further.
So, like a 5-gallon bucket, maybe.
Oh, what I was doing is I would take a 5-gallon bucket and an air generator, not with the stone, but just a pipe blowing air, trying to get as much micro bubbles going. Put in worm castings, compost. Even you can go out to a forest, grab leaf mulch from under the trees, and you get not the crusty on top, but a little bit down where it's already been broken down. Bring that home and do the exact same process. You're just trying to grab the biology, and biology in its multitudes are there in trillions and quadrillions, sextillions of biology in one handful of leaf mulch. And if you want to go into Korean natural farming, jadam, you can do that. Take a baked potato and put those both in a 5-gallon bucket. Break up the baked potato because that's the food source that you're trying to create for the biology that you want to grow out, which is going to be bacterial because you're using sugars. But you can add that into your garden as a food source and a biological source, taking it right from the forest, nothing special, baking a potato, hanging them together in water, like sitting it for 24 hours, and you use that as a fertilizer.
That's good information. Um, let's see. Do you ever so this is someone's question. Do you ever let a plant get sick so the others can leave it alone?
Sure. Yeah.
Like a
It,
trap
it's
crop.
it's a trap plant or a banker plant.
Hmm.
A plant, say you've got a particular um, uh, bug, say fruit flies. Uh, uh, oh my gosh, I'm having a blank moment for a moment. Aphids, these types of bugs want certain plants. Okay, they'll gravitate to a certain plant. So if you make companion planting decisions where that plant is set off to the side and the bugs love that plant more than they love what you're growing, what you're trying to grow, they'll go to there. As long as you have that plant for them to feed on, they're leaving your plants alone. But if you can do both, make both so healthy that the bugs don't even see your plants, because we're finding out that they can see colors, they can hear the plants. We're finding that some of the research now that plants have more senses than we do. They see the color of your shirt when you go out into the garden. Okay.
Wow.
This is some of the cutting edge research that we try to bring onto It's All About the Biology channel, in the different podcasts, to go, guys, like, look at this. Like, this is amazing. It's like water. Dr. Gerald Pollock in the fourth phase of water, and the discoveries he's made in how water moves through a plant, considering a redwood that's 150 feet tall and the water is on the ground being sucked up from the root. How the heck does it go all the way to the top of that tree? Okay, it doesn't have a pump, or does it? And that's what Gerald Pollock talks about with water. And it's like when you start connecting all these dots, and that's what I've been doing now for several years, is just connecting dots, going, oh my God, but now I figure it out.
Yeah, that is very interesting. So this year I decided to join the Grow Big TV's Mammoth Sunflower Challenge.
Cool.
So I planted sunflowers in 3 different places.
Right.
Okay. One of mine, riddled with bugs, done. It's done, right? The other one, the section number 2, the flower on the top is still fine, but the leaves have been eaten, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Section number 3. This area I worked on a little harder, right? So I put some marigolds and some basil in that right in front of it, right? And that section is still going. It looks great. So basil and marigolds, they totally work. They do not like that smell. So, but the only reason I was protecting the flower is because I was trying to enter this contest, right? And so I wanted to protect it. So I did it on that one section, but not the other 2. And that's the section that's thriving. And all it took was marigolds and basil.
Yep. And it took the biology that was in the seed that sprayed out into your soil structure to make your other plant that much healthier, to connect all 3 plants together to help support each other. It's like a tree, a thick trees of, say, pine trees, and the pine cone drops and that little sprout comes up, but there's no sunlight that reaches that plant. How is it surviving without that energy? It's because the mother plant connects with that child and feeds that child the energy and the necessary until another tree beside it falls, or the mother plant falls and opens up the canopy so it can get the sunlight, but it'll actually support the other plants. That is that fungal network that exists in our soils through the mycelium, etc., that can transport nutrients from a mile more away that a plant needs, that it can't produce itself. As long as it's connected to the network, that substance can be moved through the soil structure to the plant to be given to the biology to build that cell that is necessary for the plant to have health. But you have to have that overall network in under your soils to connect with everything around you.
So it wasn't just the basil, it was the basil, the marigolds, and the sunflowers all working together.
Exactly.
So it
Helping
wasn't one or
each
the other,
other.
helping each
Yep.
other. Another area that did not get attacked by the bugs at all was my Mariana tomatoes. So I had it in a raised bed that my husband got, and he drilled a hole, and then I painted the outside to preserve it.
Cool.
And so I had 2 on one side, 2 on the other side, and I had basil and radishes in the middle. That area also did not get attacked by any bugs.
Yep.
Basil and radishes with tomatoes.
Now, also, how long have you been using that bed? How mature is
That's
the
a
soil
brand
structure?
new bed.
Cool. Yep.
Brand new bed that I amended I started amending that bed around August, did some through the winter, and then finished it up in the spring. So that's a brand new bed.
Yep. Fantastic. Yep. It's amazing how Mother Nature has companion planting. You look at, I think it was in Italy, the vineyards actually were chopping down the trees that had been there for centuries at the edge of their vineyard that the grapevines were climbing. And they found that once they chopped them down, all of a sudden the grape plants weren't doing very well at all because they didn't have the symbiotic relationship with those trees that were feeding them and they were feeding to the tree, and that give and take of community. We talk about caring, sharing, and community for the human species. It exists in plants, it exists in animals. It is that synergistic diversity of everything working together. Somebody in the comments had mentioned, I thought bird song stimulates plants, and it does. You know, that early morning bird song stimulates, the spring bird song stimulates plants to growth.
I did not know that. I learned something new. Wow. Well, I do know there was a bird out there that lost her little baby bird, and she was griping me out, and I had nothing to do with it. I did not touch that bird at all because I know you're not supposed to touch them. So I did not touch that bird. I just stayed out of it. The bird did end up dying, and the mother was grieving for a long time. I felt terrible. Poor mama bird.
Well, they have feelings as well. We don't give animals and nature as much credit as we really should, but we'll go back to DNA. Okay, can we read DNA? Only in the last, few dozens of years have we really been able to start looking at DNA, yet every bit of biology is reading the DNA of the plant to be able to build the plant. The DNA in your body has to be read to create a skin cell, and in each one of your cells, your complete genetic makeup is listed in each of your cells. We can't read it, but the biology can, and it can build new cells from those genetic codes. It can build new biology from available genetic codes. If something is missing biology, whether it's us or a soil in our soils, the biology that exists there can gather the components necessary to build missing biology in the system to try to bring it into balance and bring it into health. And remember, going back to that predator prey, there has to be enough of prey for a predator to exist, and then that predator becomes prey for the next level. And it's that community working together in all the different levels. It's a jungle out there, young lady, believe me. And on a biological scale, it's one mean jungle.
It is. It's definitely challenging. I did read a question I wanted to ask you while you were talking. Oh, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your garden. So how big of a gardening space do you have?
Well, we actually have just under 3 acres. We have done a variety of different gardening. I've got tomatoes out there right now that I put out when we were supposed to in the spring, and they got frozen, so they're not doing very well. Gardening for me, I'm moving more into the flowers, perennials. Um, I don't eat a lot of green. Um, I simply understand that if I want to be healthy in my body, I have to give my body the necessary components and the easiest for my body to break down to use to build healthy cells in me. And we feed plants because that is the components that plants needs. But I'm not green, so I don't eat very much for plant. That's why I'm moving more into black-eyed Susans and things like that, perennial plants to support bees and nature, to bring more of nature into my space, and create abundance for birds, bees. Have birds on my property. I've never heard their songs before. I've got plants that I've never seen on my property before, just coming out of nowhere. And like, we're talking tens of thousands of cornflowers that all of a sudden started growing on my property. And it's like, I never planted those. Where did those come from?
You think it was the birds dropped them off, maybe, possibly?
The way it is and spread out on my property, it would have been having to be 100 birds that went through and dropped seeds, or maybe sometime in the past somebody had a seed pack and they were just throwing them out randomly.
Yeah.
uh,
I don't know.
and that's possible. But the other consideration that most people don't think about is seeds survive in our soils for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years until it reaches that point where there's enough water, there's the right biology, the right environment has been created for the biology inside the seed to wake up and go, oh, hey, it's time to sprout. That's where
very interesting. That's very interesting.
yeah.
It is. That's really interesting to think of, because sometimes when we get these random things in our garden that we call volunteers, they were just waiting for us to get the soil right.
Well, and you consider, if you're working up your soil, anything that was 6 inches down, if you're working 6 inches deep, you're bringing up into the surface, and the possibility of that seed reaching the right moisture content, etc., to sprout is happening. Where the if you're only working the top, say, half an inch, just scarifying the top and then adding compost, etc., on top to build it up, then those seeds aren't going to be able to sprout because it hasn't met the right criteria for that seed to be able to sprout.
Yeah. Hubby just got home.
Oh, it's all his fault.
Hold on. You go ahead and keep talking for.
Okay, not a problem. Just to bring up another thing is a farmer in Australia, they were using biology when they were planting their crops, and they would harvest, and I think it was the second year they noticed that in strips, exactly where they were sowing the seeds and adding the biology, a species of plant that they hadn't seen in decades started growing in that narrow strip again that they hadn't seen. But if you consider biology, moving through a soil structure or taking over a soil structure moves 1 inch per year. So they have this little strip of this native plant that's come back, nothing else in the middle, because the biology hasn't gotten there to make those seeds that are there in that soil the right environment for them to sprout. But that's an example of exactly what I'm talking about, adding the biology in and creating the right circumstances for different seeds to sprout.
Yeah, that's good. That's good information. I think that does happen. I think I don't know if it's my internet going in and out or your internet going in and out.
Well, you're the one that just froze up, so I think it was yours that went out.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Okay. Let me see if there's anything else.
Hey guys, throw your questions in the chat. Quick.
Yeah, if you have some questions, go ahead and throw those in the chat. I pretty much got through the questions that I wanted to ask for today. And I found this a very interesting. I'll probably listen back so I can catch some things. Sorry, my internet's a little spotty right now. And I actually did hit the button a couple of times too. So I don't know what to say about that. But I am looking forward to gaining more knowledge from your videos and your lives. I've got my notification bell turned on. So when you do one of your interviews, I noticed you had one that uploaded about, I don't know, it's about 10 to 17 hours ago or whatever, which I don't know if that was 2 days ago or whatever, because
Mondays
happened.
Yep.
Yeah. So
we have shows. The Soil Matters is Mondays, 2:00 Pacific, for 2 hours, and it's the host is Leighton Morrison. This is a man that developed the horizontal soil system. He, like I was saying earlier, he builds soil system. That's what his pleasure and joy in life is. Now he's carpenter, stone cutter to understanding soils a much greater depth than I do. And then Wednesdays in the evenings, 6 p.m. Pacific, I'm on with Andy Lopez. Fridays, I'm just starting, like you were talking about, starting a new series on your channel. I'm bringing back conversations in Ken's Cafe, Bushcraft Family. I'm gonna have him on. We're still in talks. We're emailing back and forth a little bit. I've got Simply Jane
Homestead,
the hillbilly chicken. And it's going to be a lot more. And if you have a channel, guys, and you want me to come onto your channel, just simply reach out. It's all about the biology at gmail.com. And, I would love to light more candles, to interact with your audience, to bring them deeper understandings of how this system is interconnected. And, whether it's energy, frequency, vibration, talking vapor pressure deficit, talking indoor growing where it's strictly a controlled environment, or the different terroirs that your environment can do. Are you growing in a desert? Do you need to talk about things that will help in desert growing? I've been researching all this stuff, jumped down so many rabbit holes, and anything I really was truly interested in, I would scrape around in the bottom of the rabbit hole and I would find a wormhole, and I would go down that to get in deeper understanding. So
yeah,
it's amazing.
It's interesting. I find gardening and amending your soil and the biology of it all very interesting, and I want to continue to learn as a gardener and as a person just interested in these things. I want to continue to grow on YouTube with gardening and with other things. But I did find this very interesting. I was a little nervous because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get good enough questions for this guy. He's pretty smart. So I was like, okay.
Well, Cake in the Cup is from Australia, guys. So he's dealing with a total different terroir.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Whole different environment than us.
Yeah. And Gail, I want to say thank you so much for what you are doing, sharing your journey and the experiences that you're having is teaching other people to understand these different things. And in giving like that, you're one of the lit candles that is giving of yourself. And I'm so appreciative.
I talk about my failures as well as my successes.
Keeping it real.
Because my failures, they teach other people So this fall, I will be researching all this year's problems to fix them for next year. So
Yep.
hopefully I'll get some things fixed in my yard with amending and whatnot, and come up with some healthier plants for next year. So,
And consider that everything you've learned about the biology today about the plants applies to your chickens, any other animals, and yourself.
yeah.
Your gut microbiome, baby. That's, you got to be considering that, and what are you giving it to build healthy cells in your body.
Yeah. And that kind of goes into the Dr. Gundry plant paradox thing. So we should maybe have a talk about that, because I have learned some about the gut microbiome, and I do follow the plant paradox diet. I'm falling off the fence and back on the fence and off the fence, back on the fence.
I went a lot way away from the greens, because I'm not made of green, into more of the carnivorous type diet, and understanding of those are the building blocks my body needs. So, and I've seen so many people that have had so many really bad conditions where they've switched to that dietary, outlook, and they've totally gotten rid of all the problems that they've been having with
I
their
do
body.
feel better when I'm eating the plant paradox way of life. I feel better when I'm eating that way. So my problem,
I haven't heard of it, actually.
yeah, Dr. Gundry, Dr. Stephen Gundry talks a lot about microbiome. So we maybe need to schedule another chat just to talk about that, because that would be very interesting. So we might get that set up for the future. I think that would be a really good conversation as well.
Gail, just send me a day that you want to do it, and if I have it available, I'm there, baby.
Yeah, nothing is ever perfect. Yet we all have a lot of failures, and I'll share mine with you guys, and I hope that somebody will learn from that. So be looking for those cool gardening subjects. So next week, I will be starting the brand new series, The Secret of My Success. My first guest is going to be Bushcraft Family. And I'm also going to do Butler Family Farm and Lulu's Treasure Trove. Those are some guests I have scheduled coming up. And that series is going to be like a twice a month kind of thing. And my co-host for that is going to be Heather with Milk and Honey Heritage Farms. So she's going to be my little she's going to be my sidekick for that one. So thank you for coming up. And I will go on your email and go ahead and get my interview with you scheduled.
Cool.
So.
And guys, for my channel, if you follow me on Facebook, IG, LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube, I post the shows that are upcoming shows that are going to be live stream, because we live stream everything. If you're following me there, you'll get the notifications of what's coming up. We've got 2 young ladies coming up this coming Monday with Leighton Morrison. Both have been on our show, but we're going to have them combined together, because they're going to go deep into what I've been talking about at level. I stay away from those levels.
Yeah. I was worried about this level right here, the kin level. I was like, oh boy. But anyway, I think I did okay. So
you did amazing, and thank you so much for having me. And thank you to everybody in chat and anybody that's going to comment and like Gail's video, guys. It helps her channel. Okay, so help Gail here.
Yes, and go by and check out this channel. His channel name's right above there. If I have a moderator, if you guys would go ahead and put that link in the chat before we leave real quick. Let's see. Today is Tuesday. So I believe Grow Big TV is going to have a garden chat here in about 7 minutes. So you guys,
we better get off so we can get over there.
I know, that's right. Thank you so much for coming on. I'll get my interview with you scheduled soon, and then we'll do the microbiome talk another time. So
sounds good. Bye, everybody.
All right, bye. Bye, everybody. Thank you for coming on.